Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. CalHope can help. Access CalHope's free and secure mental health resources. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
Hi, it's Patrick O'Driscoll here. You might know me as Pods. I'd like to welcome you to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. It's the podcast we produce for the love of farming right throughout the Adelaide Hills region. And now, I'll hand over to Adelaide Hills Farm Services' very own Belle Baker. Over to you, Belle.
Greetings and hello, Hills dwellers. Welcome to this month's Adelaide Hills Farmcast, the podcast that gives you a handy list, think Keith Martin's Almanac, for any of you who are old enough to remember, of jobs you could be considering for July. It's about giving you the heads up and the opportunity to plan ahead. We're recording this episode on a chilly late Friday afternoon on our property on the outskirts of Littlehampton. We've got the fire going in the brazier to warm our toes and a glass of red wine to warm our hearts. I'm here with Alex Thomas. Alex is founder of Planter Seed for Safety, which is an initiative to achieve real health and safety outcomes in rural Australia. Hi Alex, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Belle.
It's good to do this on a Friday night afternoon, just a quiet wine at the end of the week.
Couldn't think of a better time of week.
No, it's good, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Now you and I are going to chat about practical ways we can be safe as we work on our properties, but I have to run this past you. When I talk about you to other people, this is what this is what I say. I say Alex is a champion for safe work practices on the farm. But you know what? I see their eyes glaze over and I say, no, practical farm safety. Yeah, but wait, there's more. Practical farm safety, real world safety. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm more, yeah. I mean, is that a question?
Yeah. Yes. So when you see people's eyes glaze over because we suddenly mention farm safety, is that your bag? Is that really
my God. Well, it's funny because I feel like when I introduce myself and I say I specialise in work health and safety, I go, wait. I'm like the people kind, not the box ticking kind, and I don't have the personality of a wet fish.
No, you don't. That's fairly obvious this early in our Farmcast.
Well, thank you.
Now, as regular listeners will know, we go through the farming calendar for July, and what I might do here, Alex, seeing as you're here, is we might get your quick reaction to farm safety when we go through some of those tasks.
Sure.
All right? Mm-hmm. If this is the first time you're listening to the Farmcast, we've divided our farm calendar into different sections or agricultural enterprises, and as not everything necessarily needs action every month, I do take liberties with this, keeping the information relevant and practical. If there's any particular information you're looking for, please let me know. I'm always keen to help and welcome your feedback. Everything I'm about to discuss can be found in the show notes for this episode in your podcast player or on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just look for the Farmcast tab, it's there, you'll see it, you'll find it, you're good to go. I'm fired up, let's get into it. Livestock. Our attention this month turns to weaning lambs and calves from their mothers. As a general rule, calves and lambs should be at least 12 weeks old. If you have weighing facilities, the rule of thumb is that calves should be over 100 kilograms and lambs should be at least 40% of their adult weight. We suggest that the cows or sheep be moved at least 2 paddocks away, and it's best if they aren't in line of sight. Now, years ago when I was working in New Zealand on a Solaire cattle stud, these Solaires were amazing. We'd wean these cows and send them way over the hills, think sort of one end of the Adelaide Hills to the other. And by morning, these darn cows had come back. There's something about, have you had any experience with Solaire cattle?
Absolutely not.
No, and you know, I'm pleased I have, but I'm pleased it's kind of in history books now. It was quite an extraordinary thing, so it's really important that when you're weaning your stock, that they're far enough away so that they're not tempted to break fences and come back. Lambs or calves can be left in the yards in a small paddock with water and hay for a couple of days, and that'll help them adjust to life without their mother's milk. An important point here is that water troughs should be placed on fence lines. Weaners can tend to fret and they have a tendency to pace along fence lines. If water troughs are in the centre of the paddock, they just may not find them. It's a bigger problem in broadacre situations, of course, and where paddocks are larger, or if weaning is done in summer months, but it is something to consider in the Adelaide Hills. As an added bonus, if you keep your weaners in the yards and hand feed them on good quality, you know, that really yummy, smelly, lucerne hay, and handle them for a couple of days or a week, your stock will become so much more accustomed to you and it'll be so much easier to handle them next time you get them in the yards. They associate being in the yards with a reward. It's pretty simple stuff, really. This is what we do in the stud cattle game, and perhaps if there's enough interest, I might talk to a stud breeder in a future Farmcast so we can get a better understanding of what they do to ensure their stock are quiet and easy to handle. But also, you know, that's sort of 101 step to training them or to having them on a lead. Have you done any work with stud stock before, Alex?
No, I wish I had. And you know, to your point about the cattle, the breed of cattle you talked about before, I have the same relationship with sheep.
Yeah, right. And absolutely. Yeah, not big on them, huh?
No, not really. No. A number of personal experiences to talk about on that front, which we probably won't touch on.
No. We'll do that perhaps once we stop recording, shall we? Yeah. Yes. Okay. We'll
good.
Make a note of that. These cold winter months can bring on grass tetany in both cattle and sheep. Grass tetany can occur when the stock's blood magnesium levels get down to a critical level, and most commonly occurs in animals that are perhaps older or lactating. It can be triggered after a frost and when feed is low in availability and in quality. The simple way to avoid this is to make roughage available by way of hay or pellets. It might also be worthwhile offering a magnesium or salt lick, particularly once you've weaned their calves or lambs off. The treatment for grass tetany is intravenous calcium and magnesium injection administered by a veterinarian, and you guessed it, that starts getting pricey. We want to avoid that. Anything coming up for you as far as farm safety at this stage, Alex?
Oh, look, one thing I did think of was just in terms of weaners reaching a certain weight, you know, and then you get into potentially lamb marking season, and, you know, inherently you've got someone that has to lift a lamb up into a cradle and how taxing that can be on a person. So it's just an interesting thing, you know, in safety lamb we talk about safety being first, but the reality is that there is always going to be a tension or a trade-off between productivity and doing what you have to do versus managing the risk of something going wrong. So I guess in that particular scenario, you obviously can't avoid the necessity to have these sheep at a certain weight. But I think from a manual handling perspective, you have to make sure that you've got the right person on the cradle that's, you know, perfectly fit and competent to be lifting that weight while they're
that's an excellent point. Very good point. Pastures. Post-emergent spraying has slowed down a little given all the rain we've had, and access to paddocks without getting bogged has been, you know, tricky. We are in the Adelaide Hills after all. So whilst it is getting late in the season, it is still continuing. We at Adelaide Hills Farm Services are in the process of upgrading our spray equipment, so in the coming months we'll be offering more spraying services that can cover larger areas and more specific pastures and weeds. Next month, I think what I'll do is I'll get Pods on board, if he'll let me, and I'll do a short interview so he can tell us what that means, what that looks like and what that means for you out there in the Adelaide Hills. Fertilisers should be the next thing that come to mind. Contractors that do fertiliser spreading for small properties are few and far between in the hills. So if you have a crop or a pasture that's in needing fertiliser, we encourage you to talk to your local reseller and book in a contractor as soon as you can. It's that prior planning stuff. You just must. The last thing you want is for your crop to deteriorate and then have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to get anyone on property. Something else you may consider doing this winter with any old mouldy hay bales that are past their best is to spread it out on your paddocks in bare spots that have significant runoff or a really low coverage of grasses. This is a wonderful way to encourage growth and to help reduce soil erosion and water runoff. Now, not a lot of fun, it's hard work, you need gloves because you're gonna hurt your hands, you need to bend your knees. What do you think, Alex?
Oh, totally. Oh, it's just, aside from that, it's just kind of revolting stuff to handle.
Oh,
really.
it is. It's gross, isn't it? But instead of letting it go to waste,
brilliant.
You know, it really can help. You're putting a little bit back into the soil, and you'll be amazed at what comes up, and hopefully it's good quality pasture hay at the very least, and you're not about to grow a heap of other weeds.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's probably also important, if you can, to wrap something around your face so that you're not sucking in all those spores.
Dusts, all the mould dust. Oh yeah, okay. I'm half thinking I want to strike that off my list, but it is something to do. It is something to do. You just have to do it think about it before you do it.
Yep, that's right.
Water. Water is definitely not in short supply in the Adelaide Hills in winter, particularly if you have dams. Most of them should be full or thereabouts by now, and any troughs that are gravity fed should be okay as well. Winter rains do, however, bring with them the possibility of contamination from chemicals or debris from water runoff. You may notice your stock drinking from puddles or avoiding dam water, which may indicate that the water has become unpalatable. It might be worth testing the water for contaminants and potentially for salt levels, because of course that will bring the salt level will come up. Over time, you will become familiar with the habits of your stock and their movements on your property. But if you're unsure, it may be worth popping into your local reseller to see if they can help you. The other thing that comes to my mind is small children and dams. Mm-hmm. You know, we have all these wonderful laws about swimming pools and fences. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be a big gap when it comes to dams.
Yeah, look, it's one of everybody, certainly in the agricultural world, has heard of those tragic incidents where children have been lost. You know, they've taken off for 10 minutes out of mum or dad's sight, and unfortunately they've ended up in a dam. So I guess to reinforce the point, like any open source of water, and that includes tanks, you know, with a ladder, you really want to put a fence or something around that source to make sure that little ones can't climb in.
Yeah. Now my favourite, I'm on a bit of a rant here with productive gardens. I have been watching YouTube videos lately on how to turn your prunings into new plants. So we have, I think it's a peach tree, to be perfectly honest. Pods nearly killed it last year. It's still going. It hasn't produced any fruit. It does look like it needs a bit of pruning. The rabbits have done a pretty good job at the bottom. I need to do some more work at the top. And I gather I can do cuttings, prunings, and grow a new tree, which I thought might be quite handy if that one dies. I've now subscribed to a couple of YouTube channels, including Mark Valencia's Self-Sufficient Me. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
It's really cool. Bedtime reading is what I tend to do, or listening. And Liz Zorab's By the Farm channel. Now, she's in the UK, but it is she's terribly practical. If that interests anyone out there, I've put the links in the show notes. I have to admit to feeling a little underqualified to be talking about productive gardens, as my experience is definitely limited. Yeah. Okay.
Won't even go there.
No. Okay. So I have started getting John Lamb's Good Gardening e-newsletter. Now it's a free newsletter, and you can get to it by going to gardenaandoutdoorliving.com. This week's newsletter is jam-packed with information and links, including a great article from Balhanna Nurseries, which they're quite remarkable, and they're really good on trees, productive trees. So I'll post a link in the show notes. I think that's the best thing to do.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now, last month I got quite excited about planting my first crop of strawberries in hanging baskets, which I will put a photo in the show notes. So much so that I then got in contact with the team at Green Valley Strawberries and went out to learn about their planting process and how it was wonderful, and how it compares to what a home gardener would do. It basically is nothing like what a home gardener would do. I've put some updates on the socials, and I will make a video available shortly, but I'm actually in a bit of a competition there with them. You know, I've got one basket full of their cuttings and two lots that I got from local nurseries, and we're going to check in with them regularly and see whose strawberries are. Now, their strawberries are a variety that come originally from California. They are apparently the ones that taste the best, they're firmest, etc. I've got no hope, but I'm going to give it a go. I'll give it a whirl. Now, I've had a look, Alex, on your website and your biography. And apparently you're a recovering perfectionist, is that right?
A recovering one, yes, that's true.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, it would appear that that's something else you and I have in common.
Horrendous affliction, isn't it?
It is. It's not fair, really. Now, I've been delaying putting in a veggie garden because I wanted matching raised, you can imagine, matching raised garden beds all in a row in an area that is completely free of weeds and grass before I even contemplated getting my hands dirty.
I feel your pain.
And I've got a little bit of space to do it, so it's not that I don't have space. And to be honest, I've also been, now this is embarrassing because Pods has just walked up to us.
Onto set.
And hi Pods, and he's now going to hear me say this. To be honest, I've also been waiting for Pods to fence off an area from rabbits and rampaging dogs. But I think we all know that that's just not going to happen anytime soon. Fortunately, he doesn't have a microphone on him, so he can't reply.
Yeah, he's now publicly accountable too.
Yes, he's now publicly accountable, yep. So I've had to bite the bullet, and I want you to know that this next bit, I'm really uncomfortable about this, but I'm going to post a picture of my veggie garden in inverted commas. It's just a couple of buckets and bits and pieces, planted ad hoc. I just have to let go of this perfectionist thing, and it's not sitting well with me.
Well, how would you feel, Belle, if I took a picture of my veggie patch
please.
And I posted it alongside your veggie patch?
Thank you, Alex. Yep, excellent. All right, we'll do that.
I'm
All
here
right.
to help.
Note to self, radio, excellent, thank you. So in my little raggedy garden here, I've planted pumpkin from seed, garlic and strawberries. I am about to plant potatoes. Apparently this is the last moment you can do that. Broccoli and carrots. But I hear that it's also a good time to plant beetroot, cauliflower, celery, lettuce, peas and cabbage, to name a few. Now, I'm one of these people that figures, well, if I'm not going to eat it, I won't grow it.
Can I just ask a question, Belle? I mean, this is me standing in the seed aisle at Bunnings, looking at the backs of packets and going, what the bloody hell should I be planting?
Yes.
Still haven't got a clue.
No.
So can you shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, sure. So you can either follow our Farmcast on a monthly basis.
Yep,
that would be my first suggestion. AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. Just hit the Farmcast tab. As I suggested earlier, get onto John Lamb's Good Gardening. He is the expert. He is South Australian based, so everything he says there is relevant.
Brilliant.
So that's your first go-to thing. I'll send you the link myself, Alex. That's where you want to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. Now, I also did another cool thing today, which it's a pity Pods is here listening because, you know, I don't try and tell him everything. But I've also just ordered a few asparagus crowns from Mr. Fothergills. You know, the label, Mr. Fothergills.
No, mate, I'm a total amateur.
Okay,
I'll
put the link in the show notes. Now, these, because I love asparagus. Now, these asparagus crowns, they are supplied as 2-year-old plants that should speed up production in theory. I'm working on the principle that they will be stronger and more likely to survive my limited gardening skills and the rabbits and the rampaging dogs and things. I will keep you posted.
Great.
Yes.
All the best with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't going to tell Pods that I'd done that, but there we are. So hopefully that will give you a few ideas of what you could be thinking about and planning to do on your property in the coming months. I'll be back next month with some more timely jobs to add to your to-do list. And don't forget, the show notes for this episode can be found on our website, AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. Before I chat with Alex, Pod's caught up with Ashley Davidson from Woodshield Posts when he was in South Australia last month. We're big advocates for Woodshield Posts, and we're seeing an increasing number of clients taking up this option.
Hi there everybody, thank you very much for joining us, and today I'm pleased to announce that I have a good friend of ours here, Ash Davidson from Woodshield. Ash has travelled in all the way from Brisbane in southeast Queensland there, and he is the National Development Manager for Woodshield. G'day to you, Ash.
Pods, nice to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us, mate, and here we are sitting on some classic Woodshield posts, proudly supplied by your good self, Ash. Tell us about Woodshield. How did it come by? How did you become involved? And what are the pros and cons of your Woodshield product?
Thanks, Pods. Woodshield came about because in the vineyards there was lots of broken posts. The CCA posts, like the ones that we've got at the back there, breaking off, and same with the creosote, and then lots of dripper tube and irrigation pipe as well that was sort of just lying around. A couple of guys were out there drinking wine, as you do, and they said, wouldn't it be great to have a post that's made out of the waste kind of thing? That's something that we can do that's not going to break. So they decided to muck around. They were plastic guys, and they come up with the medium density polyethylene from the drip tube, recycled round and put onto a timber post. But there's no chemical in that timber post, and the reason being, when it's fully encapsulated in the poly, you don't need to have any chemical, and at end of life you can recycle the whole thing. And with the timber not being treated with no chemical, it doesn't need to have a special permission to go to landfill. It can be burnt or it can be mulched. So you can peel the poly off like a banana, and that can be recycled again. The timber can be mulched or burnt back, so that's sort of no cost. And at the end of the day, you've got something that's going to last about 4 to 5 times longer than a CCA post, about 40% stronger. Hence, these little ones here, that's our standard round post there, that has the strength of your standard sort of 4 to 5 inch fence post, but 100% more flex. And that's what the vineyards wanted at the start, because when they're harvesting, they go over those posts and the posts shake to get the grape off there, and that's when they were finding if it's rotten at the bottom, they were snapping off. Whereas these things, obviously, you're not going to get any issues with rot, so they don't snap off. They've got more flex because the poly shield holds it in nice and tight, and you don't get that crack and snap that you would with a timber post.
Okay, excellent. So my bit of research says, Ash, and we've got a bundle of Creo posts behind us here. And the first thing you said, and I agree with you totally, we pulled up a seat a few minutes ago and then bang, we were hit with the odour of the creosote. And I've got to admit, these posts have been sitting outside for 18 months, pushing on 2 years. So they have been drying, but there's still that really strong, evident smell of the creosote base that hits you between the eyes. But with those inline posts, they're 1.8s, 4 to 5 Creos there. The price of the Creo post compared to the Woodshield posts that you would use for your inline posts, I would say is very, very comparable now.
It would be, with creosote especially. It all depends now. Creosote's getting harder and harder to get. You've got to place your orders in, and then your fingers crossed you're going to get them. And then you've also got the handling issues. I don't know if your workers are happy to handle creosote, because you've got the gloves, the masks, the goggles. Some of these guys in the vineyards even wear suits because you get that chemical burn on the cheek. And yeah, that smell is, even after, what did you say, a year and a half.
That's right. The interesting part about the handling there, Ash, that's a very, very good point. We had a gentleman working for us, a lovely fella. He's been in the agricultural sector as a farmer and in the resale business for the entirety of his working career. He came on board for a period of time. We were doing a job with the Woodshield Posts. He said, and I kid you not, 2 to 3 minutes in, maybe no more than 5, he said these posts are just lovely to handle. Gloves on, gloves off, doesn't matter. Yeah. They're uniform, they're beautiful to handle, and we found them very easy to use in the fence installation process. I guess one of the take-home messages is that we've got to be very careful. Obviously, we put our posts in the ground, Ash. We've then got to hold a wire or number of wires to the post. That is why the post is in the ground. But we just can't use our normal fencing staples or barbed fencing staples. Can you just tell us why, and then maybe give us some examples of the products that you would recommend to use with the Woodshield post?
Yeah, you can nail it and you can screw it like you would any normal post. Like you said before, the barbs, which are quite common to be used in treated timber posts, for example, the barbs, when it goes through the plastic, where that barb is, it'll leave a tiny little hole. And where that tiny little hole is, you can get water, moisture, you can get temperature, you can get rot through there. It's pretty rare when you think about it, because, the post is outside. I mean, these get used in the ocean. I don't know if you eat plenty of oysters down there, but off the Eyre Peninsula down there, these are in the ocean growing oysters, and they still screw or nail. That's a riser from an oyster farm now. They still nail and screw them, and the ocean comes up and down over the posts every day. But otherwise, who wants to use a hammer nowadays when you've got all these new fasters anyway? You just get on the end of the drill and you can punch it in no problem. I mean, that's a vineyard clip there with a screw, or one there with a nail. Chances are that, people go with the screws anyway, because the drill's a lot easier. You got the Davo's fencing clip from Western Victoria, that's pretty popular now. You got staples without barbs that work. The reason why they put barbs on staples was to keep them in the wood, because the wood would dry out and crack and the staple would come loose. Whereas with this product, the staple doesn't get loose because the post doesn't dry out and crack. So you've got no cracks, no splinters, it just stays in there. So you get a lot more longevity with less maintenance. That's excellent to know, and a really good benefit of the Woodshield post. So here we are talking about fencing. We've been very general, but from our conversation before we've rolled on camera today, Ash, you've let it be known to me and Belle that the Woodshield posts are used in a variety of ag industries. Can you just touch on them, whether it be oyster leases in the sea to equine fences to anything in between? Well, they started with vineyards, as we discussed before, and that was just because of the breakage rates, and then they were picked up and they were put into oyster farms because the ocean and the marine borer don't eat them. They last and then they got picked up and used in horse fencing, purely I think because the maintenance factor, horses don't eat them and they don't have to be painted. The way that they go in, they stay like that, they don't degrade. And then we've got playgrounds being built out of them, bollards for car parks and park surrounds and what have you. The orchards are using them. We're organically certified and have been for over 10 years, and a lot of organic people use them purely because they don't really have a choice as such, and it's good for the environment. This is a sustainable product from a circular economy, taking ag waste and putting it around sustainable timber that can be recycled at the end of life.
Yeah, okay, so just a great product. We realise that it may not be for everybody, but
Sure.
It's certainly another option out there in the fencing. We've got the CCA behind us, the treated pine, which is the CCA. We've got the creosote, which most people out there are familiar with, but now we've got another product called Woodshield, and fantastic product, very durable, very strong, and I think it is price competitive.
Yeah, if you want to build something that's going to last and you want to have low maintenance, then we would say that this is the go. You know, you're right, it's not going to be for everybody. I mean, steel's going up. You know, your prices of steel are ridiculous, and steel can be dangerous for animals at the same time. Plus, you don't have the flexibility using different types of fasteners. The creosote is not good for anyone. I don't think we should be sitting here for much longer anyway. And then the CCA is, treated timber. It's got copper, chrome and arsenic in there. You know, they're all carcinogenic. And at the end of life, which is a big cost nowadays, if you've got a property and you want to change things up, you know, redo it, a landscape, and you're ripping out, you're going to have to pay to dump them, because you can't burn them. You can't just take them to the rubbish dump. You've got to go to a licensed landfill to get rid of them. And that's one of the things we used to see in the vineyards, piles and piles of broken posts, and you can't do anything with. So nowadays, if you're looking at products, I think especially in the ag sector, you've got to look at what's the end of life, where's your responsibility. Otherwise, you're digging a big hole and you're dumping it in there for the next generation.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Ash, the other point you made is I don't think we should sit here for too much longer with the creos in the background.
Yeah.
I know you've got a plane to catch this afternoon heading back to the Sunshine State.
Yeah, hopefully it's not raining.
Hopefully it's not raining. Ash is from Queensland, as I mentioned. There's only so much a Queenslander can take of the Adelaide Hills weather in June.
Unless we've got a glass of red by the fire, then we're all right.
That's right. Okay, thank you again for your time,
No
Ash,
worries.
and safe travels and all the best.
Cheers, pods.
That was Pods talking with Ashley Davidson from Woodshield Posts. If you're curious about whether the Woodshield option is something that would work for you, you can get more information from their website, woodshield.com.au, or you can give us a call on 0429 130 673. Alex,
Hello.
thank you for joining us this lovely Friday afternoon.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, Belle.
Thank you. And just for transparency, Pods has arrived. He's finished work for the day and he has joined us. He's having a beer while we're still enjoying this lovely Howard's Vineyard Shiraz. Okay. Now, Alex, you grew up on Parnu Station, southeast of Yunta and east of Peterborough. Now, I was telling a friend about this, and the first thing he said was, how close to the Golden North factory is that?
Quite a distance.
Quite a distance?
Yeah, but you know what? You could get there. You could get there within,
I think if it's the
couple
Golden
hours or
North
something.
factory, we can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, from say, centre of Adelaide, how long does it take you to get to Parnu?
Parnaroo.
Parnaroo.
Yeah, no, you're right. So probably from the centre of Adelaide, I would say 3.5 to 4 hours.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
That just gives us some perspective of
Yeah, sure.
where home was. Now, Alex, your dad has inspired your unwavering commitment to the health, safety and well-being of people on rural properties. Can you tell us a bit about him and why he's inspired you on this journey?
Oh gosh. So how much time have we got for this?
Go for it. Go for it.
All right. So I obviously grew up on this station. I had the most idyllic childhood you could possibly imagine, and my dad was my absolute superhero. So Dad came from the mid-north in a very sort of wealthy farming area around Nairne, and in the late 70s, I think the notion was, which was before my time, I might add, but the notion was get big or get out in terms of your farming entities.
And that stands true now, to be honest.
Totally agree. So at which point the family business decided to expand, and they bought this pastoral property called Parnaroo. And Dad took on the almighty adventure of going out and trying to make that work. And so that was in the late 70s. And then I think he'd only been there for a couple of years, and you can imagine kind of the overhead associated with having purchased that property.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then got hit by the drought of 82. So again, before my time, but for those of you who aren't familiar with that drought, we're talking about having to do, shoot mass shootings of livestock and insane wool prices through the floor.
Yes.
Bullets being more expensive than actually putting a sheep on a truck and sending them to an abattoir.
Yes. My recollection down at Lucendale was, the bullets were really quick. The holes that were dug, it was cheaper to put a bullet in them than to take them to market, which I know still stays with my mum and my dad now, having gone through that. It was an awful time.
Completely harrowing. And so drought of 82. And so the dad, in his, infinite wisdom, and as rural people do, incredibly resilient and very innovative, I suppose, sought to diversify the business and decided to go and start mustering feral goats for a living. And so mum was at home checking on waters and, upholding the station while dad went away. And he caught this nasty livestock-borne virus called Q fever.
Yes.
And Q stands for query. So, and to this day, lots of people don't know a whole lot about it. And at that point in time, you certainly couldn't inoculate it against it. And of course, health and safety wasn't really high on the agenda. So he got this nasty thing. And he tells stories of, being in his bedroom for sort of 3 weeks and coming out with his hands peeling because his fevers were so hot. And what we didn't realise at the time is that had done irreparable damage to his organs.
Yeah.
And so, whilst going flat out like a bat out of hell trying to make ends meet, not probably terribly unsurprising that he got Ross River virus from mosquitoes some years later. I don't know if I mentioned, but Q fever you can catch from livestock, so feral goats. And then, of course, because of how compromising all of this was on his organs, he then got diabetes. We then got, as a family, got hit by the drought of the 90s, which was called the millennial drought.
Yes.
And, of course, then he got heart failure and kidney failure, obviously had to sell the family property because things just weren't doing well. And I guess the other thing that needs to be pointed out is that this station is positioned in a particular part of South Australia that is notorious for really low rainfall.
Okay. So that's above the goiter line, isn't it?
That's right, exactly. Yep. And so you talk to any farmer in the mid-north and they'll tell you that goiter's line is essentially moving further and further north as time goes by. And what that means is that anything sort of south of the goiter's line is good for growing crops, anything north is pastoral country. And so if that's moving further and further south, what that means is that if anyone's got property within that region, they need more and more in order to be profitable.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course, like my mum and dad split up during that time, and long story short, dad ended up permanently disabled at the age of 56. And I'm just so damn proud of everything that he's done for my family. But he's a part of that stoic generation that didn't slow down, didn't go to the doctor, Pastures and Fanta for life, ate on the run, didn't take holidays, was always coming home with, had taken a massive tumble off a motorbike or whatever. And I just thought, bloody hell, we have to be able to do this better. Like, we have to get people home safely. And so having looked after Dad in various capacities since I was around 15, it's just my mission. Like, I'm just so passionate about putting health and safety front of mind and getting people home safely at the end of the day.
That's quite an incredible story, Alex.
Thanks, mate.
I said at the beginning that people's eyes tend to glaze over when they hear farm safety or even office safety. And I think that's because they think about pen pushing, paperwork or tick boxing. But I read on your website, it's just not, I was about to say it's not that simple, but it is as simple as just don't kill anyone.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So for any of the listeners that have spent any time in a massive corporate organisation, they'll be all too familiar with this narrative that health and safety is all about bureaucracy and policies and procedures and box ticking. But the fact is that legislation has changed in 2012, and there is not one line in the Act or the regs, the Work Health and Safety Act or regs, that says you need a documented policy or procedure in order to be compliant.
So how does that work with, say, Safe Work SA, and say there's an accident on a work site and they do an investigation, they go through your books and work out, well, did you train that person? Does that person have specific knowledge on the safety side of things? How does that sit with what you've just said?
So I guess statistically, you've got to have a think about this. So you are more likely to get hurt on a farm or for someone to get killed than you are to get prosecuted by the regulator. So
wow.
So what does that mean? And what it means is that our goal as businesses needs to be just don't kill someone and you avoid all of that stuff altogether.
Yeah, okay.
So if we think about the most practical things that we as business people can do to prevent someone from getting seriously injured or killed, sure, training might be a part of it, but maybe putting a guard around an auger or maybe not stepping over a spinning exposed PTO shaft might be even smarter than that, I suppose.
So it's that simple. I just feel like you've clarified years worth of paperwork in one sentence. I love it. Now, Alex, most of your work is focused around large agricultural enterprises and grower groups, advocates and corporates, for want of a better term. I think I've got that right. But most people who are listening to our Farmcast just may not identify as farmers as such, and really their rural lifestyle, as such, it plays second fiddle to their day job, whether it be in an office or somewhere in Adelaide or just in any other average workplace. So are they right to think that the risks they face on their lifestyle properties are less when they sort of go out just to feed the horses, when they get home at 6 o'clock at night and they quickly go out and feed the horses, they run down the driveway to check the cows on their four-wheel drive motorbike, or on Sunday afternoon, they vaccinate their 10 sheep. Are their risks so much less than those people that you probably deal with more often on bigger properties, bigger scale?
Oh, look, it's an interesting question, Belle. So, I think what it comes down to is the psychology of risk. And I think we'd all like to think that a small-scale operation has less risk than a big-scale operation. But at the end of the day, you can still get very seriously hurt or die dealing with these inherently dangerous things. So, look, I think it also speaks to the fact that farming is a profession, and the activities that live within farming require a certain level of skill and expertise, which is, why I love the work that you guys are doing, because you're there to support businesses that potentially don't have those skills. So I guess all I would say is that, the dangers are very real, and there's a great big, it's not my job to stand here and scare the pants off anyone.
No, and we don't want that. No.
No, but I think, slow down, just stop and think before you're about to do something. There probably is a better way, and the only way you're going to know that is to really engage with your neighbour, even your partner, your kids, have a conversation and understand what their perception of this task might be. Get a more rounded view on how it could be done differently.
Okay, so that leads me into two things. You have a couple of taglines. One is #plant a seed for safety, and the other one that I love is save a life, listen to your wife. Tell me about that, and how would that play out in the Adelaide Hills?
Oh, my Lord, where do I even start with that?
No, well, they are wonderful, catchy phrases, but they actually do mean something. And just you've come here with accessories. What have we got here? You've got your yellow plant a seed for safety shovel. We do love a good shovel.
Good.
Now, I've seen you on the socials and on the things that you do online and the events that you speak at, etc. And I've seen you out and about with that shovel. It has cut. I've also seen you doing a few safety dances.
Yes.
Online, which is all great. But, they are wonderful taglines, but they actually mean something, don't they?
So, I guess with the benefit of having grown up watching the dynamic between not only my parents, but obviously other men and women in the district, it's not unusual for there to be an assumption, a classic assumption, that a certain gender of farmer, they can be notorious for having done a certain thing a certain way for years. And then you have the other gender potentially standing there going, why don't you do this differently? Simply because they have the option to provide a fresher perspective because they haven't been doing it that way for such a long time, or maybe... But
also, perhaps, if I look at Pods and I, because, we can put a name to this gender bias that we're talking about now, because, Pods is certainly a more traditional farmer. I'm probably a little bit more of a modern farmer. There are initiatives and things that I think of doing. So, but I'm not always as physically strong. I'm not out there on the tools all day, and I have a saying that basically if I have to get on the tools, we're all in trouble.
Yep.
But I do have a different perspective. So where Pods will use muscle, I might use a bit of a workaround, and hopefully that is generally always safer.
Look, 100%. So I think it's the fact that women are inherently the closest other person to the work being done. So they are in a great position to be able to influence the other person, the man generally, to do things differently. They may have worked in other workplaces and seen how things could have been done differently, or have generally a different perception of risk. They may not be quite as physically adept at doing that particular task, so they're more likely to think of a workaround. So it goes to the whole conversation around diversity and inclusion. The more people there are that contribute to this conversation, the better the outcome is going to be for everyone involved.
And you really find that these, I want to call them taglines, these hashtags, this movement that you're creating really does help with those conversations. It helps to get things started.
So I think, we're all aware of the traditional narrative around work health and safety being very bureaucratic, very penalties, policies, all that stuff. And it's completely uninspiring because if what we're looking for is for people to do things differently and change their behaviour, and behaviour change is a very complex thing, we need to change the way we speak about safety. And so Plant a Seed for Safety is about literally having a conversation or asking a good question that plants a seed in someone's mind to think about something a bit differently. Whereas Save a Life, Listen to Your Wife is really honing in on the value, the enormous contribution that rural women play in rural industries and communities, and how often, it's untapped. And we need to start having that conversation more often.
Well, I think this is a really good place to start having that conversation. Thank you, Alex. You've given us so much to think about. And look, my mind is racing. I've got a zillion more questions I want to ask. For example, we go out into people's properties and we see cattle yards that, might have nails out, or they're sort of a bit broken or a bit weak. We see barbed wire on the ground. We see potential risks all over the place. And we make it a part of what we do and what we say to our clients. Oh, hey, have you thought about perhaps we can do a little bit of a repair on this and this will help X, Y, Z. I think what you're saying gives us something to start that conversation. And look, we look forward to partnering with you. We're looking at doing a bit of getting your taglines involved in our business and the way we speak. So thank you so much. Like I said, I've got a zillion more questions for you, but we are getting near the bottom of this beautiful Howard Vineyard Shiraz, and I might save it for when we're off air. Beautiful. But for now, thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Bill and Pods.
Thank you for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. We hope you found it thought-provoking and a little bit entertaining. You can leave your comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on Farmcast and look for the July episode.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. CalHope can help. Access CalHope's free and secure mental health resources. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.